So every day for the past 2 weeks, I've been going back and forth with Oral Tracy Maverick, a local radio station person and television personality in Jamaica. Um, and I've been called a bunch of names during that whole process. I've been divisive, anti local, big fool from New York, shanty, and worse. So today, what I'm going to do is do a couple of things. One is put some timeline and including receipts on what led us to where we are currently now. Some quotes and context to the conversation. Not respond in an emotive manner because that doesn't help anyone. Just a calm, collective, cerebral response as to what transpired. So we can sort of end all this noise and sort of get back to talking about the football and not about myself or that person. My position has not changed and always be the same. You pick the best 11 and the best squad for Jamaica, regardless of where the players are born. You don't try to have this so-called balanced team between the number of local players and overseas based players. If you end up with 10 local players in the starting lineup, that's what it entails. And vice versa for those born overseas, that's what it entails. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. You don't have to try to balance it out and not be using meritocracy. I have had a running conversation and disagreement with many individuals in Jamaica around what I view as the discrimination against players who are born inside Jamaica. In any country, if you become a citizen, whether by birth or naturalization, then you're entitled to all rights and privileges afforded such person in that country. In Jamaica, when it comes to football, the JFF, and the various national teams, that is not the case. There's a quota system that's been effected in Jamaica as it relates to the football teams. Now, that quota system is explicit, even though it's not in writing, as it relates to the junior football teams. And we have seen this manifest itself in a number of teams, and we have seen what the outcome is, as we saw with the Jamaica men's under 20 team when they went to CONCACAF and got 15-0 in 3 games, because they excluded 14 English-born players who play for a various number of teams, Tottenham, Man U, Arsenal, etc., who the previous coach, John Wall, wanted to bring in, and they refused to do so. In the national team, there is no quota that's explicitly mentioned, but if you look at the team and the squad number of instances, there is quota there, but it's covert quota, but no one would ever admit that. And if you talk to officials in JFF, they would vehemently deny this. But let's focus on coming back to where we are. And I make those points to say, from where I sit, and by the way, since this question has been asked numerous times and I've mentioned it, I was not born in Jamaica. I am a Jamaican citizen by naturalization. I grew up in Jamaica, went there when I was about 3.5 years old, and left after high school. But I'm Jamaican, whether it's heart, whether it's where how I am. I have family in Jamaica currently, and those of you who have experienced the hurricane, hopefully the country can rebuild soon and you can get your life back to normal. And I see where the diaspora have been extremely supportive of Jamaica, and people are spending time, effort, money, not only support their families, but just the country at large. And it's not only Jamaican diaspora, whether born in Jamaica or outside Jamaica, even the people of Jamaican heritage who are not Jamaican citizens. I've seen them in England packing boxes, doing yeoman's work because they believe in the country, they believe in their heritage, and they want to support individuals in Jamaica. So that's without a doubt. Now, this whole back and forth started with Oral Tracy Maverick around me being on KLAS, a radio station in Jamaica, and have a conversation with their host about the Jamaica national team. And the premise of my call, part of it, the key part of my call was about this. I indicated, and I've been going through the Jamaica lineup, and I've been having a lot of dialogue on my channel about the teams. I've expressed concern about most of the players were in the last squad and their lack of game time. I have shown for each player um, their stats, which include their stats for their club, and a number of them are not getting the game time for their club or limited game time, and their stats for the national team. Because you have to do a holistic comparison and assessment, both the eye test and the stats, to provide a perspective on any given player. So I've talked about that. And part of the analysis is a comparative analysis, talk about different players, what they're doing. And even the players who are getting game time are not necessarily producing the numbers that one would like when you're going to go into the final run of CONCACAF World Cup playoff, especially the two difficult games we have. So I've talked about this ad nauseum. But part of my conversation with KLAS was that I don't believe Ronaldo Cephas, who basically divides opinion for the national team, he has a lot of very good skill sets, especially his speed. His decision making has been questioned, and he's been effective in some instances, but ineffective when it comes to the more difficult teams that he plays against, the teams ranked in the top 100 in FIFA ranking, but have done well with the teams ranked outside of that. And I mentioned that, but I will also mention is that, and this was before more recent information come to light about where players are in terms of injuries. I noted that if we have 6 or probably 7 players, so if we have Cephas, Dixon, DeJohn Whisper Richards, Akaim Dixon, I'm talking about, Tyrese Campbell, Leon Bailey, Damari Gray, and even Mason Greenwood, that Cephas would not have a guaranteed starting position. And part of my rationale for this is that when I look at, if I look at Bailey and Gray, what level they've played at, you won't even mention Greenwood because to me he's an automatic starter, given that he has the reputation, the pedigree, and he's playing really well for his club. I think he has about 10 goal contribution this year in about same number of games before last weekend. And he also was a top scorer, joint top scorer in the French top league last year. So that's without question. And Gray and Bailey are proven commodities, even though more recently they haven't necessarily produced as much for the national team as you'd like. Now, the view is that Cephas has produced for the national team more recently. And my contention is, yes, he has, but look at who his stats are against. So I was making a case that even though Cephas is viewed in that light as to be exciting and dynamic and produce for the national team, I didn't see that a short team starting, given the pedigree of the potential other players. I also mentioned that Dixon, who is playing at League Two, who is in the team that's second to last in the league, that Dixon, given where he is not guaranteed to be in the squad if we only take 4 wingers. Because my philosophy on a 23-man team is should have 7 forward players, 3 center forwards, and 4 wingers. And you may even hope that one of your center forwards have the versatility to play on the wing, as we may have a little bit with Ramon Barrell, who's one of the players who normally gets called up for the national team. And if they're only 4 and you have 7, then 3, or if you have 6, then 2 would have to sit and not be in the squad. So that was sort of my rationale. Now, Maverick overheard this conversation and went on his channel and went off. His view was, I'm being divisive. The normal tendency for some people have is, I'm only focused on overseas players. I don't want local players to be in the team. Anything that foreign is good. And we think that if those of us who are based overseas think that anything is local is bad. And I can understand some of that perception, given the quality of football in Jamaica, or sometimes lack thereof, given the affinity sometimes that countries have for players who are bred locally. We see this in Brazil. We see this in the UK with academy players. You're going to support those you're familiar with, those you've seen grown up, especially through high school football, those you think are great at what they do, given where they play. I can understand some of it, but I don't have those affiliation and association. I go off mainly what I call empirical evidence to substantiate my positions. I'm not emotive about this. I look at the numbers, I look at where you play and how you play. I'm going to give you an example. Campbell and Dixon were both at Charlton last year in League One. Campbell is a regular starter for the team. Dixon, when the team got promoted, and last year Dixon was in and out of the squad. This year, Campbell's team, Charlton, got promoted to The championship, doing well. Dixon got sent on loan to League Two. Dixon's team is in second to last position. Dixon started out getting game time, but maybe he has not been producing. He's not getting much game time recently. So his time is being cut continuously. If I think about how coaches select teams, they select teams based on your performance at your club, because there's not a lot of other information to inform that view. Some may also leverage the national team for that performance, especially in Jamaica's case, you'd have to, because a lot of players are not getting game time at the club. But the international windows are short. Coaches have limited or no time to really assess players and their form and their ability. You're not playing games in that apart from the games you play. There's not much more. Training doesn't give you a lot of intelligent information. In fact, training is a lot about where you are fitness-wise and other things, not necessarily your form in terms of playing, right? Some coaches have their criteria for selection, and we have heard some of those criteria. Now, Maverick calling me divisive is a little bit self-serving because he's as divisive as they come. This is a person who told, because Greenwood decided not to join Jamaica for any window, and to go away, and he called him all sort of negative names. But let's go through and play some of what Maverick have said in the past. He's very hypocritical, by the way. So I'll call these out. A couple of things. He's called the JFF vultures for pursuing Greenwood. He has being back and forth with YouTubers about not engaging with them, but then supporting them. So it's hard. He's always on the fence. It's hard to tell where he is. But let me play some of this, and I'll react to some of what he has said in the past, and also react to some of what his supporters have said. Because what normally happens in this program is they'll have a topic or a subject, and that thing may go on for 2 weeks or a month, back and forth with this. And a lot of people call the program are the same people, day after day after day, and talk about the same thing, right? And he seemed like he's very close to his audience, and he has a very large, a big enough audience in Jamaica. I think he said he has a YouTube channel. He has about 100,000 people, and he also a sports channel. I think it's part of RGR, which is obviously over the internet, so people can access it from anywhere in the world. And so, but he's a very disingenuous person and a very hypocritical person, and that comes across quite a bit. And I'll play some of this so you can get a good perspective as to what I'm alluding to.
It might sound a bit like deja vu, like we've been down this road before, but we are at yet another critical juncture in yet another World Cup qualifying cycle. But we're going to make the call again for balance in the selection of the team. This thinking that has not worked for 25 years, that any player playing in any league in England is better for the team than any other player playing anywhere else in the world. Steve McLaren, an Englishman, was brought here, obviously, to reinforce that flawed philosophy. But we must stop thinking in absolutes and start thinking balance. The fact of the matter is, as a compliment to some of the England-born players, some of the born Jamaican players are conspicuously adding more intensity, tenacity, technical skills, and commitment to the team that we're not seeing when they are not in the team. Tell the truth. And we're not saying no foreign born or all local born or vice versa. Again, we're begging for balance. Just some more balance.
Now, if one was to take away from that, the first question is, what does balance entail? And what he's saying balance is that there should be an equitable distribution, in my interpretation, of local versus overseas born players. Now, as I had mentioned at the outset, your playing and your ability to be part of the squad, again, the team should be based on whatever criteria the coach uses to select the team, but it should be based on meritocracy. Now, he talks about balance because he's saying the concept or the idea of selecting overseas-based players in the national team, or maybe most of them, it's around, in terms of the numbers, it's around the perception that because they learn their trade outside Jamaica, they're better players, right? Now, I would say this. It's a really interesting concept. And then he went on to say, which is very important, people, Talked about commitment. And I will use the word aggressiveness. That's what he said, but it's commitment, it's how hard you play. So he's questioning the professionalism of the players who are born outside Jamaica. That's the first thing. And I think that's, frankly, for anyone who have seen these players who were born in the UK come and play, that's not appropriate. Secondly, he will tell you that he can call out specific players and how hard they play as the basis for his argument. So he may want to call out Damian Lowe. He may want to call out Dixon. He may even call out Shamar Nicholson. Even to me, that would be a stretch. And he would say they're much harder. And then he would probably say, oh, Latibeaudiere is a little bit different. Now, if you look at the players, the first question one should ask oneself in trying to make a cogent argument is this, which is, do the players play differently when they play for their clubs versus Jamaica? Those players he's alluding to. Is there a discernible difference? Different players play at different speed, have different mannerism, have different way of operating. Ethan Pinnock is very methodical in his approach in terms of how he plays, very cerebral in his approach. You've never seen him running 100 miles an hour. Not sure he can anyway. Playing for Brentford or playing for Jamaica, I don't see any change. Isaac Hayden, who to me Jamaica's most important player, no different. Watching from Arsenal to Newcastle, now at QPR, coming to Jamaica squad recently, he plays a very heady type of football. He's always thinking the game and making decisions. And he gets a lot of yellow cards. I mean, he's putting a foot in and plays hard. Latibeaudiere, that goes without question. Bobby Reid, that goes without question. Lemba Kisa, that goes without question. So every player that he can put out, I could put out a corresponding player and say this player plays hard. Gray, Damari Gray, thoughtful player, cerebral player, always playing within himself. He's overseas born, but Leon Bailey is no different, right? So I don't understand that concept. Leon Bailey is no different. Ronaldo Cephas, who's very, very quick. And if you want to talk about tenacity and playing hard, Cephas, when he gets the ball, he plays hard. When he doesn't have the ball, watch him and tell me how hard he plays. Bailey Cadamarti, who just came in the team. If I compare him to Nicholson, seems similar to me. In fact, Cadamarti to me is a harder player. Nicholson, probably smart, older, maybe a little bit wiser, plays a little bit differently. Even though nowadays he's more of a leader and he's playing harder. So any player that he can call out, I can call it a corresponding player who maybe just as physical, may have show the same tenacity that he alluded to. So his argument is flawed, but he continue to portray this. He continue to provide that information to his audience, which is pretty large in Jamaica, and some people are running with that. And he'll point to Dixon as an example, who actually is struggling at the club level, and yes, he does play hard, right? But if you look at a Whisper, Dujon Whisper, much more controlled player. You don't see him playing as so-called hard. It's just how players play. Some player fast twitch muscle, they run fast, they run hard, they're always there. Some player play a different game. Some players work hard on defense. Some players work hard on offense. There is no evidence to substantiate that any player on the Jamaican national team is not trying to do their best, regardless of where they were born. And to make that to provide that argument as a person who's been in the media for over 20 years is very disingenuous, is very unfair, but resonate well with his audience, and he continued to espouse that view, which is not okay. Now let's keep going. You'll see more of this.
Football Federation to specifically get former Manchester United forward Mason Greenwood to come and play for Jamaica. Even the hiring of the new Reggae Boys coach, Steve McLaren, was linked to his affiliation to Greenwood and him possibly getting the baller to join the Reggae Boys. Of course, the pursuit of Greenwood goes way back, even before those high-profile domestic issues in England. The JFF has been hunting Mason Greenwood like vultures.
Calling an organization like the JFF hunting like vultures, a very derogatory term. It's very disparaging. It's very belittling. For someone who's a raised personality to use such term to describe an organization who supposedly has no conflict with in terms of talking about how they pursue a player, which is something that's done across the globe. You look at Morocco's team, making the semifinal of the World Cup, and how many foreign-based players they have. Look at the U.S. and pursuit of Balogun for 2 years, asking Balogun over and over again to make a choice, eventually chose the U.S. So countries pursue players on a continuous basis, right? And some fans get perturbed when that occurs if the player don't commit, because every country believes that they have a right to have these players play for them. And some players want to have options and want to have choice. So he's calling the JFF vultures. And then when Greenwood decided not to come, he's calling that Greenwood should go, which in Jamaica is a very derogatory way and a very to talk about someone, a very dismissive way. That's his normal rhetoric. And people in Jamaica, like him and his sycophants, will say, oh, that's how we speak. There's some parts of the culture which need to change. Being disrespectful, being divisive, being inappropriate in your language is not okay. So when I speak, part of the conversation is, where's he from? Where was he born? He's speaky spokey. I have no idea what speaky spokey mean. One's ability to speak the English language, which is the main language of Jamaica, should not be viewed in a derogatory term because you can enunciate and pronounce words, or because you can communicate in a way which is understandable by all. Not everyone who participates in this space understands the Jamaican dialect. And frankly, I would still speak so-called, quote-unquote, English, regardless, because that's how I communicate. I have never been told, since I've been in this country, that I speak, that I'm quote-unquote speaky spokey, which is a derogatory way in Jamaica of saying you're pretending to be something you're not, which I've never tried to be. And this is what is utilized, someone to try to go at you in a negative fashion, is saying you're trying to be something you're not. You're trying to be American, try to speak a certain way. When I first went to Jamaica as a young kid, I had an English accent. I developed a Jamaican one subsequently. And so being in the US and being in the corporate environment, you spend 80% of your time engaging with individuals who don't understand the dialect. So at some point, you develop a way of communicating, which frankly is understood by those who speak English and shouldn't be a negative. But some people can take a negative, a positive, frankly, and make it a negative. Now, let's make another point. When you have debates, they must be built on facts, data, and context. Maverick often makes sweeping claims without due diligence. Listen to his YouTube channel or his radio show. He can't name one stat about anything. He can't come up with any numbers about anything. Doesn't check the numbers, no stats, no match, no data, no tactical evidence, just assumptions and opinions. When I speak, I back it up. I look at match performance. I look at goals. I look at assists. I look at defensive recoveries. I look at passing accuracy. I look at heat map. My analysis is never personal. It's analytical. I just saw recently where Tuchel, who coaches England, is picking his England team and left out Miles Lewis-Kelly, who's a brilliant footballer, only 18. And his view is that if you're not getting game time with your club team, then he has to select somebody else who's getting game time, which he did. And Maz, frankly, doesn't deserve it because how well he's played for England and for Arsenal. But now he's being kept up by another player, Calafiori. Now, Jamaica doesn't necessarily have that luxury sometimes because a lot of Jamaican players are not getting game time. So you may have to tweak what criteria you utilize to select players. Now, it's really interesting to hear Maverick speak and his fans, I'm going to call them, take whatever he says as if it's gospel, when a lot of times he has no substance to back up what he says. Now, he has noted a number of instances around YouTubers. So he would come out and say he supports the little man. He supports the downtrodden. He supports those who have to have a voice. But yes, he's the same person who is negative against those same individuals. So we play an example with YouTubers. I'll play what he says, and then I'll respond to it.
You see the YouTube man, them a bomb rush. When you go to the press conference up and see them ready, a YouTube man, them take over the press conference, you know, boss. Yeah, man, I say to some of my media colleagues, them say, watch out, we're in a press conference and you can't get in a question to the coach. Because YouTube man, them just all over the coach. All over YouTube man, them I look content for them channel, brother.
So that was the first caller, and I cut it very, very short, where you hear him knocking YouTubers that when you go to the conference, there's too many of them and you can't get a word in. Here's another way where the second caller is making a point about the JFF press conferences and also making a point that the YouTubers ask better questions sometimes, but he wasn't hearing the caller. He had his own view.
With how things are being done at the press conferences for the national manager, team coach.
The football team?
Yes. Here's why. I don't think that the questions being asked to the national coach are very insightful. I think based on because I've listened to them.
The YouTube man take over the press conference.
No, but I hear some journalists who are there asking some very surface level questions, some very superficial questions. For example,
people like me nobody go to them press conference. From we see the football, we don't want to talk to no coach.
But to be fair,
so people like me and of some other people, you know, we don't come. Let me tell you the honest truth. What happened at them press conference? You know, there's a plethora of YouTubers now. We do football content in Jamaica. Is when they go to the press conference, my boss, and the YouTuber them run the question. But to me, I see them ask a whole for nonsense in there. The last one me going on. When one of them asks a question, me come out of the room, you know. Yeah, man. We not listen to them, but and them take over the something. So the frontline journalists them basically push to a side now.
Now you're hearing people. This is clear. He's knocking the local kids, and most of them are kids, youngsters, young men, mainly young men, who are going to these conferences, trying to get content for their channels, because that's what we do as YouTubers, including himself, by the way, because he has a YouTube channel, but you could never tell. You hear him knocking him twice. The first one was him saying, very dismissive, he and his other media colleagues don't go to these events. And the second one you just heard is him, the caller, trying to make a point. He didn't hear what the caller was saying. He was so busy trying to make his point about him not going to his press conference and YouTubers take over and they ask nonsense questions. But the caller is saying, no, those nonsense questions you're alluding to also is asked by the traditional media. And I can tell you this, I've been to those press conferences and I've been involved with them, mainly by Zoom. And a lot of times, because there's quite a number of YouTubers there, YouTubers' questions are better than traditional media. There is no debate about that. You go and check someone's press conferences and the questions being asked. The level of due diligence is very, very superficial in terms of what the public needs to know and how those questions are provided to the recipient of those questions in terms of the coach or the JFF management to solicit responses which will provide clarity on any given matter. That's not done really well. And I've seen in one instance where I called out to the media rep for the JFF, where a traditional media person was lying on his bed with his shirt off and his computer on his chest, and he's on camera. I think he may have worked for, I don't want to call an organization and make a mistake, but it's one of the major newspaper organizations. He had his shirt off, which was so unprofessional, and I called it out. So that's inappropriate. So to belittle and bemoan the YouTubers as if they are like parasites or not good journalists, and some of them are not trained, we'd agree, but even the trained journalists, another trained journalist, their questions are very superficial, or if you want to call them nonsensical, but he and his colleagues in that environment, they're comfortable with it. Now, here's the hypocrisy. That was him belittling, berating, dismissing YouTubers who cover Jamaica football. Listen to him now talking about his view on where the traditional media and their perspective on YouTubers, our new media is what I would call it. And you tell me at the end of this, where is he really sitting? What is he saying? Listen to this.
Platforms. Basically, they are complaining about free speech. They are complaining, say there is too much free speech. Can you imagine? Media practitioners mostly, complain about the very thing that enable them to fulfill for them dream, Free speech. Now, obviously, times change and things are evolved. And of course, mainstream media practitioners no longer control the narrative of what people hear and what people see in the various space them. So it look like them feeling awkward about it now, and as a result, them a kick and scream and a ball about too many unregulated platforms and too much misinformation, and people, look here, me hear it first, it came to my attention during the US election, during the Donald Trump, Kamala Harris campaign. Especially when the people from the left, they used to complain so much about the proliferation of unregulated this and unregulated that and people spewing misinformation and blah, 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 blah. And we see it and make it way now in the Jamaican space. Because we see one prominent Jamaican media practitioner a complaint left, right, and center the other day about one of the biggest dangers is the proliferation of social media and people are just able to give whatever the news they want to give and whatever perspective they want to. That is what free speech is all about. But you know what it is, though, people? It is a set of dinosaurs who basically get used to controlling the narrative. Yet, me talk about mainstream media practitioners, you know.
You hear what he said, people? It's a set of dinosaurs who are focused on or have used to controlling the narrative. Now, he's not saying that he's one of those people who are like that, you know. But the previous two excerpts I played you, that's who he was operating as, right? That was him in his traditional media role, being dismissive of YouTubers, which is what he's now supporting. And these are recent things that he has done in terms of him being on both sides of the fence. So you ask yourself, what is he talking about? Is he doing this just to make a quick buck? Or does he really have a position and a base that he's supporting?
You so control the narrative. And now that the space are evolved now and the advent of social media and people without going to the university to get a degree in mass communication can just set up them platform now and start talk what they want to talk and do them own in-depth digging and searching and expose. They have a problem with that. Now, remember my background, you know. Remember me come out of mainstream media, you know. Me still work in a mainstream media, you know. But me have a certain level of tolerance and a certain level of, you know, you're not naive.
So people, he says he has a certain level of tolerance. Did he sound like someone who has tolerance when he was being dismissive of the YouTubers that cover Jamaican football? Didn't he say he and his friends leave, they don't go back because those YouTubers dominate the space and he doesn't want to be in that space? Almost as if he's an elite and these individuals were not meant to be in his space at all and should not be in his space because I'm going to do my own assumption, they don't have the intellect and the capacity and the capability and the ability to interact with him in those environments. And they're dominating the environment and he doesn't want to be there because you know what? They should be in the same space.
You understand that the world is evolving and the space are evolved. But instead of bitching and complaining about it, you understand if you can adapt, you adapt and take advantage of the space if you can. And me, I'm to be a firm believer in a free speech, you know. Almost ultimate free speech. You see a lot of the things that people complain about and the use of certain words and the use of certain phrases where people have a problem with. Me have no problem with them. The only reason why I don't use them every day is because, you know, the broadcast authorities and of course, whatever platform you use, they might have limitations to some of them. But me personally, I wouldn't lose a night's sleep in using whatever language me see fit for use to describe a particular scenario or use to capture whatever emotions there are. Obviously, you don't want people going into a crowded theater and shout out fire. Obviously, you don't want people to be inciting violence and inciting, you know, disorder and inciting antisocial behavior. I mean, that is not for the general good. But when we are talking about things like perspectives and politics and perspective and other, you know, national issues and international issues, it no matter if you go to university and you have 3 degrees, or you want little man, we sweep out the gutter this up. Everybody have a perspective. There's no monopoly on information and no monopoly expressing one's thoughts and one's perspectives. This is a high level of intolerance, especially as we say, by some of these dinosaurs in a mainstream media. And there's another aspect of it that is particularly annoying to me. Whenever they complain, it is invariably laced with some condescending, you know, expressions like, you know, people are not educated enough to decipher what is wrong from right and what is true from untrue. Duh. So who designate who? The authority for what people to hear and what people to see. They underestimate the power of the individual human brain to decipher the information we out there in the various space them and decide how them are going to consume it. Leave people, make them get all that is available to them. Because some of them start get irrelevant in the space now, you know. I remember saying we're not talking about Jamaica only, you know. This is something all over the world, you know.
So you wonder when some people operate the way they do they have memory issues? Don't they recall what they have said? Don't they recall what position they have taken? Because for someone to go ahead and make those comments is just disingenuous. It makes no sense to me, right? I don't understand that. If you're going to come and make that comment and that statement and talk about the situation like he did, I don't understand where that's coming from. It's very disconcerting to me, and it's very concerning to me when you come out and berate YouTubers and then you come out and support them. How can anybody trust you? How can anyone deem you to be authentic? You just seem like a fake operating that way. It makes no sense. Now, let's go to more recent event where on his channel, I have been berated. I have been challenged. My reputation has been questioned. And I have come back and made my own videos to respond to those things. Now, one of the things that you hear in these conversations is how he describes me and how I'm nonsensical and I'm a fool from New York and all that. And I've made reference to my resume to say, go on LinkedIn and check my resume and come back to me. Because I've never been told, I spent 30 years in corporate. I've never been told I'm an idiot or I'm a fool. People may disagree with me. People may challenge me. People may debate me. But when you are that negative, when you're that dismissive, when you're inappropriate in your language, then I'm going to respond. Now, two of the persons in here, one is a Pelper person, and one is a Craig from Houston, and we'll touch upon each of those. And I did call Craig from Houston a name, and I'll talk about it as you go through this because of my annoyance. And I did also apologize later because I don't believe that we should be utilizing names when we disagree with people. But when someone is questioning your intelligence and the totality of what you said, it's not okay. And I see another thing. Maverick have done something which are inappropriate. And here's why. When the conversation was being held about what my information I used to inform my decisions, and people questioned that I didn't use certain information, he never said, you know what? I have had communication with him, and that's not the case. He pretended as if I didn't. And I'll talk about those as we go through this. But so listen.
I come like when the man them say about CFAS. And that I say it sound to
but you know, remember quick and fast though, Maverick.
So here's the people, now listen closely.
That's my main thing. I'm just quick and fast so that somebody else can get a chance. And I'm glad you talked to Kranky already. I'm going to send a message where this Kranky thing is concerned. Virgin, let me tell you something. My find say, man, we take stats and use stats. Because remember, my accounts me do from me, they are left 10th grade, I go straight up. I don't do nothing else. Right. But it's one of the biggest misleading things you can ever to just take up stats and decide that you're going to use and run forward and ignore the actual watching of a game, the actual seeing what is happening. Right. You can go take one stats at about players that play for club and all of them things, and then pick your side, your national side. Who, when you pick your national side, these players are not offering anything. Exactly. But the players who you take a poor stats from for them club are the ones who are actually playing better for the national side where you have. So when it comes to that now, which one of them players you going to play when you pick your national side?
Boss. Are
you going to say this man a bigger player, so I have to play him over the man who actually produced for you?
Boss, what Kranky did the other day, my boss, the position he took was nonsensical of the highest order, you know, my boss. It was.
So let me address that before we go further in the video. Craig from Houston is making the case that he did accounting from the 10th grade, which he seemed to then suggest he's an expert when it comes to certain stats. I'm not sure I would equate accounting with stats holistically, but that's his perspective. Stats are used across various disciplines nowadays and sort of run the world because it's based on its information. Secondly, he said one can only stats, they have to use the eye test, which is you have to observe and understand the game, the player. There are certain things which are qualitative, which cannot be captured. They're not quantitative. So that has to be part of your assessment process when you assess players. But in a lot of instances, when you're looking at information about players, you're going to use the stats, goals scored, assists, if a defender, recoveries, because that's what's available and that's what's been quantified. Second, the stats didn't matter for Cephas or Dixon, to be honest, because they're not playing. They have no stats. The stats that mattered was stats for the national team because that's where they get game time. Cephas has played less than 300 minutes this season. He has 0 goals and 0 assists. You can't use any stats, so you have to move on to other stats. Dixon is no different. He doesn't have stats. His game time has been reduced significantly over the last 5, 6, 7 games. He has no goals, assists. There are no stats to use for them. So you don't have to revert to the national stats. Cephas has 2 goals, 6 assists for the national team. You can go check it on Transfer Market. I think Dixon have 2 goals and 1 assist. Cephas has not scored. He scored against St. Vincent, and he scored against Bermuda. He has not scored a goal against any team ranked within the top 100. He has 6 assists. 2 were for Nigeria in friendlies. He has 1 against Dominica, 1 against Dominican Republic, and 2 against Bermuda. That's his 6. He doesn't score against any of the teams that are deemed to be quality teams in this region, whether it's Guadeloupe, whether it's Guatemala, whether it's Panama, whether it's Honduras, whether it's Trinidad, whether it's Curacao. None of them. No assists, no goals. That's not irrefutable. So my position was, is this player just a small team bully, or is he really quality? Now, Cephas is a dynamic player. Probably one of the quickest players in football. He's dynamic. But I've seen dynamic players who look good on the eye, but then when you look at the outcome, there's no outcome to do. I'm going to give you an example. Maverick for Arsenal. Played the first 8 games. He played brilliantly. And look at the stats. No goal, no assist. He looked good on the eyes, but where's the output? Saka, who's in position, sometimes don't look that good on the eyes. Slow the play down, go inside. Look at his stats. Much better stats. There goals and assists with it. That's important. You can't win games without goals and assists. Now, you'll hear excuses about, well, he creates chances for others and they don't score. Well, if we did that for everybody, that'd be really interesting. But then you look at big chances, and some of the big chances are not there to the comparison. Dixon, on the other hand, has 2 goals, 1 assist. Same concept. No, 1 goal against Nigeria in a friendly, 1 against Dominica. I think it's one of his first game, and he has assists in another game. It may have been against Bermuda. I think that's the game that it may not be Bermuda. It's a game that Russell scored, and I'm trying to recall the game. Can't recall the game, but he has 2 goals, 1 assist. He's got a lot of chances, and he has to put them away. He's gotten chances, and part of my assessment was, well, he's not getting much game time at Crawley. They're in League 2, and Maverick said, because I made a comment the other day to say, we need midfielders. And if you look at the more recent squad, you'll see why. Tyree Saul, who's been touted in England as one of the next big thing. He's from Tottenham. He went to play at Notts County. He's played against Dixon's team where he scored 2 goals in for about 30 minutes. I think he has 4 goals and 1 assist the last time I checked about a week or 2 ago. He's playing in the same league as Dixon. His team is number 5. Dixon's team is second to last. And Maverick says, I'm trying to get somebody who's playing in a bush league to be part of the national program. When it's the same league Dixon plays in, and he's doing much better than Dixon, right? So those things to me are sort of disingenuous, disconcerting, and just not fair. But because Maverick does no research, because he doesn't know the players who are not in the national team, so there are players out there on the fringe or on the outskirt who you view as potential for Jamaica. They're not born in Jamaica. You don't see them in JPL, doesn't recognize them, doesn't want to hear about them because then again, it may affect the balance. But let me just keep going.
No, it irritated me so much that to a response, Sometimes you hear nonsense and I just ignore it, But when we hear Kranky, I try to make a case against. What Kranky was basically doing was trying to make a case against Ronaldo Cephas, my boss. When he should be making a case against the bigger name.
So here's another point on the Ronaldo Cephas. Ronaldo Cephas divides opinion. There are some people who love him, as I used to at one point in time, love his game. And after a while, you start questioning his game. So I used to say, and you can go check, and I have receipts, I can check videos on this. Cephas is the first name of the team sheet. It's Cephas and any other 10 players. And I said that for a number of weeks, right? And then after a while, I watch him, I watch his club form, I watch his play for the national team, I watch who he play against, I start doing more due diligence about his stats, and I start questioning it. Because I used to love St. Maximin, who played at Newcastle. I used to love Traore, who's now at Fulham. Right? There's certain players you see, they're dynamic players, they're exciting players. And then when you start doing more due diligence and watch them and the totality of their game, you start asking questions. Well, they may look great on the eyes, but do they have production? Are they productive players? Now you hear people say how productive Cephas is, and then you look who that production is against, and you start questioning it. At the Gold Cup, he started out getting game time. His game time dissipated after a while because he wasn't playing well. We played Panama, we played Guadeloupe, we played Guatemala. Anything there seem similar to you in terms of the quality of the opponent and the output? That's what I've been talking about. As the competition gets stiffer, the output lessens, which is not a good thing.
Players playing in bigger clubs who have been underperforming.
Underperforming
for the country.
Underperforming, brother.
And so that people like Cephas and Dixon can be rising to the fore for getting into the Jamaica team. It's not Cephas them in Piacos, you know. It's the man that we might tell about them stats for them club. And when you call them for the national team, you don't see them.
You don't see them, Maverick.
So I wasn't cursing Cephas, people. All I said was his place is not guaranteed. Now, if you heard the person, you would think I was berating Cephas and say he can't play football. I quote his stats because it's important to quote the stats. And what I just said about who he played against, goals he scored, where those teams reside in the rankings, yes, I talked about those to make my point. Because if you're making an argument, you can have some evidence to substantiate your argument. I was making my argument.
And Virgin, what may I say now, Maverick? You take his stats for the club. You also have the stats for the country to compare now.
So
if you have the stats for the country to compare,
correct.
How you gonna make a mistake?
So this is where disingenuous comes in. I have had voicemail communication and text communication with Maverick. I have walked him through my rationale from my perspective, both the stats for the country and the stats for the club, and how I draw my conclusion. He makes it seem to Craig from Houston, I think the person is. It's Craig from Houston. It makes it seem like all I quoted was stats for the club. There are no stats for the club to quote. I can't quote something that doesn't exist. I quoted stats for the country. And in fact, those are the main stats I utilize because those are the only stats that are available. And yet, Maverick, you heard him on there, operated as if I never made mention of that. And you can go, I have it in writing. I have it in writing or on voicemail where I've sent to him talking about it. We communicated via voicemail subsequent to me going on this program. And I haven't gone back to check what I said on this program, but I may also mention this to make my point, which is the same stats I provide to you. I have done it on my programs multiple times. I've done it today. I did it to him in a voicemail, and I must have said something around that when I talked to him on his program live. So he's being disingenuous. Frankly, that's euphemism. He's basically lying in terms of his response to say I haven't said that. I provided both the club stats and the country stats. And my challenge was, and my concern was, his country stats, giving go play Curacao and Trinidad in this window coming up, is a concern. Now, let me also say this. This is unfair to Cephas because we have done all these program and all these rebuttal and all these reaction videos around a player who probably doesn't deserve this. Not probably, who doesn't deserve this. It shouldn't be about him. It's a whole team responsible, not one player. But the player does divide opinion, right? People do question the player's decision-making. Sometimes people don't even question his ability. It's the decision-making. And that's part of the concern. And even Maverick will say that Cephas is not the finished article. But he does take offense, which a lot of local Jamaicans do, locally based Jamaicans, I should say, if you have anything perceived to be criticism of locally born players, they go ahead and just lose their minds. But I'll continue.
Like that now and pick them man over the man who are proper better for the country, Virgin.
It's one of the most unintelligent positions never hear anybody take. And Kranky, I'm going to tell you how he's bright. It was a done start with Kranky make for the football. But
well, yeah. Do I think I have a certain level of intellect? If you don't, then that's a personal problem, not my problem. I'm going to espouse that view, and it's 7 days a week, right? I think I have spent a lot of time and experience to have some idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about football. And you can call me a dunce, and I'm ignorant, and I'm unintelligent. I'm a fool from New York. Of course, I'm going to respond and say, go check my resume, because I have never been called those divisive names ever about my intelligence. I don't think I've ever in my life been so disrespected. And that's why I come back with so many videos talking about this. It's not okay for someone who has a platform in Jamaica, which is distributed not only in Jamaica, but globally, to be berating me, to be denigrating me, to be belittling me, to be disparaging me. to being dismissive about me when all I did was mention a player and that the player position wasn't guaranteed, and it's elevated and escalated into what we're hearing. And he's disingenuous because all he's saying that I haven't said and done, I have done, not only communicating to him, but I've done on my program numerous times. You can go watch a number of videos. I have done this. So what he's saying is disingenuous. Basically, not disingenuous, it's just lying, playing lying to make a point and to support and not support, to satisfy his audience.
Underperforming for the country,
brother.
and so that people like Cephas and Dixon can be rising to the fore for getting into the Jamaica team. It's not Cephas them in Piacos, you know. It's the...
You have never heard Maverick talk about an overseas-born player, say a Tyrese Hall, who's a citizen, who should be considered for the national team. You know why? He doesn't know any of them. And he doesn't want any of them in the national team. Not that he doesn't know them, because he doesn't really follow the team that way. I've been to a lot of games in the States. I've never seen Maverick at a game. I've never seen Maverick in Orlando in COVID. I don't see Maverick in Houston. I don't see Maverick in St. Louis. I don't see Maverick out west. So he acts like he's the main supporter for the national team and he's the man. Yeah, he will go to the national stadium and watch a few games and he'll complain about how long it takes him to drive, but he's not making the extra effort. And so he act like he's the person who is the guardian of the team and the players, but it's only that for the locally born players that he's used to. He doesn't give you know what about any player born outside Jamaica who may play for the national team. He doesn't.
Man, the way I tell you about them stats for them club, and when you call them for the national team, you don't see them.
You know, see them, Maverick. And Virgin, what may I say now, Maverick? You take stats for the club. You also have the stats for the country to compare now.
So he ignores his stats
for the country to compare.
And also, this goes to Craig from Houston, actually, because he complains about me calling him a negative name, which I probably shouldn't. And I apologize for that on previous program. But he comes to this program uninformed. Uninformed. He got piecemeal information and then come out and making this statement, and he's wrong, plain wrong. But he won't apologize. Because here's what some of these people are, people. They will say things when they're wrong, and then they act like you're the one wrong. And you should, as I would call it, you have to hold that. They're wrong, they're divisive, they're rude, they're obnoxious, but no, it's you. They put it back on you because you're the one that's wrong, not them. Even though they're the one wrong, and it's plain that the intelligence and information that one garners support one's argument show that they're wrong. But they can't see that. Blind as you know what.
Maverick, when you use stats, you have to remember this, you know. Dixon might over England and now get no play, enough like one next youth and everything. But when he play for Jamaica and play better than the youth where I get more time in England. Why is that you getting more time in England than Dixon? Dixon probably not like the condition of England. So if he get too cold some of the times. Something. You don't know what it is. But you have to know, look when the man play for Jamaica, Virgin.
So here's the argument, people. Dixon may not like the climate. Dixon may not like this. We're making excuses for people. I guess the people in Africa who are used to sunshine and tropical climate, who are playing well in England, I guess they all love the cold versus Dixon. And we don't make allowances then for people who are coming from the UK who are not used to this very terrible weather and these horrible fields. We don't make allowance for them that they need to be acclimated also to produce, even though they produce for the club's team. So we only make allowances for one side, not for the other side.
You have all of the evidence.
So hold on. We want to ask him this, Craig. When Steve McLaren looked on, remember the youth name Campbell him name? He was a young player of the year for Charlton. See? And he might compete with Dixon for the right flank position. You know? See? And remember the McLaren up Dixon.
By the way, people, Campbell plays on the left for his club. But Maverick would know this because he doesn't follow Campbell at Charlton. Maverick only knows what he sees and what's here. He doesn't follow these players like we do. He doesn't do research on these players. He doesn't know these players. And so he's making topical arguments like he does, superficial arguments to support his position. He has no idea what he's talking about a lot of times. But he tried to make it sound intelligent, and he has people like Craig from Houston who buy into his narrative.
Everybody in that training and look on them up there. But you see, when McLaren look on what him see in that training, in his wisdom, you know, he have Dixon get more playing time long before the youth when him can play now. They enough to give the coach a benefit of the doubt for him in the training session and see what's happening.
I'm mad. This Maverick for just take up one stats and say, yo, that man I play 20 minutes for club, and that man I play 5 for film club. So better I play the 20-minute man. What kind of? Oh, you gotta pick one side on that basis, Virgin.
And you're the nonsense of it too, Craig. You're the nonsense of it too. Generally speaking, most of the Jamaican players on that roster, we've been talking about it for a minute now. Most of them not doing very well for them clubs. Some of them not getting much playing time.
Let me say about this, people, because a lot of time I do this program, people pick my stuff up and they run with it and they give no credit. I brought that up first. I didn't hear anybody else talking about that. I'm the one who bring it up in comprehensive programs as I walk through each of the various areas of the team. I talked about the defenders, I talked about midfielders, and talked about the forwards and their lack of playing time. And I said, I have receipts. You can go check my programs. We have had these conversations. I was doing this over a week ago, or a couple of weeks ago, talking about these players, my concern, their lack of playing time. And then you hear him saying these things because you know what? I've said that to him. That's what he does. He take your information, repurpose it, and act like his own.
The majority of them, you know. Now, if most of our players not making an impression on them club, what we are going to use and pick the team? No most of them do when them come.
How would Maverick know who's making impression at their club? Because he's not following the clubs. He doesn't follow the players at their club. So how will he get that intelligence unless somebody told him? He doesn't follow them. He doesn't go into detail in transfer market at any other source and look them up, look where they played, number of games they played, how many minutes they played, how many goals they scored, how many assists they have. He doesn't do that. So how would he know? Unless someone told him, which is superficial information.
Play for the country.
No, most of them do when they call them to play for Maverick. No simple as that, Virgin. No simple as that.
You know, Kranky, I want big football man up on New York, my boss. Or wherever I'm there.
Anyway, Maverick.
So you hear the disrespect, people, and he and Craig are laughing that I'm a big football man. So when I called Craig a moron, he got into his feelings. So he came back subsequently complaining and then say, I think I'm intelligent and XYZ. So if you're going to be in an environment where you subtly said you agree with the man calling me a fool, because he didn't push back and say he's not a fool, or I'm not sure he was a fool, you said nothing. You were there laughing along, chuckling along with him, denigrating me, trying to belittle me, and trying to say I'm an idiot and I'm a fool. Now, Maverick is a big fish in a very small pond. Okay? My philosophy in life is this, and I said this numerous times: get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Put yourself in an environment where, you know what? You're not comfortable, and see if you can do well in that environment. Then I'll have respect for you. If you stay in the pond that you're in, where you're a big fish and you're comfortable, all good for you, but don't act like you're know-it-all, like you're the epitome of intellect and intelligence, like you're it, because it's a very small world you're in. It's not a big world. And it's very difficult for me to sit and listen to someone calling me an idiot and a fool up in New York, trying to say where I am. I'm not sure what has to do with me supposedly being a fool. When he sits in his little pond, when his sycophants are there supporting him and telling him how great he is, and he laughs and makes up stuff, and he never loses an argument because he has what he calls a nonsense meter. If your argument doesn't align with his, you're talking nonsense. I have never seen such ego and narcissism in my life.
What we really call the show about in a G.
So this was another person calling in. I think his name is Pelper or something like that. I think he called himself Pelper, but I'm gonna call him Pelper. That's how I address him, because he had the audacity to call me certain effeminate names on the program. But he had called in previously to mention the stats as him going and doing all these stats and then saying, oh, so maybe that's where Maverick got this from. All these players not getting game from their club. Now, what's really interesting about that is I did that before. I am the one who, as I said before, who called out all these players not playing at their club. Then I heard this per, whatever it is, person coming saying the same thing I said. And I basically said, he probably got it from me. He probably took my information, which he probably did. I'm not going to take it back. And then come on the radio saying, I didn't do this and this players are not playing for the club. I'm the one who called it out. And as I said before, I have receipts that my information that I utilized that talked about what he talked about and even more was done before he did it in the public domain. And let me tell you something. All those callers, when they have these ideas, they come up and they talk on my program on a continuous basis. I've never, and I've listened to it a few times, but not a lot because, you know, I don't like to listen to people who are very, very divisive. But from my knowledge and what people have told me, he has never brought this up. So I draw the conclusion it must be my data that he's using to try to beat me with my own data. It's amazing how that works, which is something Maverick has done also. But listen to this, because this person is very dismissive, very distasteful, very disrespectful. And yes, I called him a name. I don't know what his name is. I thought it was Pelp something. I said Pelper. It's supposedly it's Pelpa. I guess that must be a big difference. And he's very sensitive. Is that your right name or is that a pseudonym?
Last night, me get a message. I'm going to open the link. This is what I call Shanti.
Oh,
You see me?
Lord.
This is what I call Shanti around there. Lou.
So people, this is a person who's running a radio program and he's on TV in Jamaica. And he's there laughing and supporting somebody using a very divisive, negative, distasteful name to describe me. And he's not saying, no, why would he call the person Shanti? You don't have intelligence to say whether the person is effeminate or not. What's that about? He's there laughing and giggling in that situation. I'm telling you who this person is. What you see is partially what you get because this person is not genuine. He's a fake. And you can see and if you're a responsible person up in the public domain and someone come in your program, they're upset, they're emotional, it's very much, and they're going to try to call this person a very negative name, but maybe because you're both in the same camp, you operate the same way, you're from the same community environment, maybe that's why you're supportive of someone being so disrespectful, unbelievably disrespectful. And this person then want respect when they're disrespectful. I call the person out. So you're using my data and information, and you disrespect my own data and information to support this egomaniac.
Yes, my brother. Shanti.
People said it to me, but we don't look for it.
Get a hold of yourself, Shanti. Yo, when I tell Shanti, I say no. Him a go low, you know. So, Shanti, you can go low, you know, but explosion nation no go low. You see me?
So this is a Jamaican matcha thing, people, about utilizing certain terms, and they get sensitive about terms. People who are comfortable in their manhood don't worry about terms. They don't worry about terms. But if you're very uncomfortable, those terms about going low, which is I'm not going to be at the level and try to, as Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high, which basically means I'm going to try to be professional. No, I'm going to meet you where you want to be met. That's where I'm going to meet you. I'm going to meet you there because you know what? If you disrespect me, I'm going to do the same thing to you. I am not going to try to be professional and try to be corporate and try to be above ground. No. If you're disrespectful, if you're rude, if you're obnoxious, then you know what? That's how you should be treated. And we sometimes make allowances for people who are that way, and it's like bullies. Bully will be bully if they're allowed to be bully. But bully has to be crushed when they're bullying people.
In free for go low.
Yeah.
In free for go low. Explosion nation no low.
Yeah.
No go low, brother. So why on that?
Yeah, man.
Yo.
And then people who are very simpleton in how they operate, that's how they talk. Simple in their mindset, simple in their engagement model, simple in their communication, simple in their interaction. The whole concept of utilizing certain words with negative connotation to them to cast aspersions on others. Crazy.
By the way, but
the man round there face like a witch, you know, brother.
Yeah.
Now we say I'm tracing. Now, what is he doing, people? If you're calling somebody Shanti, isn't that Tracy? But Maverick name is Oral Tracy Maverick. Just get rid of the Y. In fact, yeah. You say I trace. Trace in Jamaica means you are acting effeminate, you act like a woman, and you're very mouthy, you're saying a lot of things, which a man doesn't do. Because you know it's a chauvinistic society in a lot of different ways. You're manly in your approach, you're manly or you engage, and you don't have time for those kind of arguments. You're more physical in terms of how you operate. Well, Oral Trace is probably a good name for Maverick. He does that really well. And Tracy, which is a female name, says it a lot. And as I said, if you go low and if you come at me hard, I am not turning the other cheek. I learned something in the military where I spent 4 years, people. Let me just say this. If you come hard, we're coming harder. That's how we operate. Now take no check. Is that Jamaican enough for you?
Craig from Houston and talk about him yesterday. By the way,
all my name, all right, that's all. The man came to same bright time. I tell you, we forgot look pan and rail and bright. And the man.
Yeah, because if somebody, because somebody called me an idiot and I'm a fool from New York and I'm nonsense and I talk, I'm going to refer you to my experience and what I may have accomplished to substantiate that I have receipts that talks about my intellect. I have receipts that talk about my intellect. I don't need to come on here and run my mouth and talk about different things. I have receipts. And it bothers people. It bothers Craig from Houston. He wouldn't do that. That's XYZ. No. If you tell somebody that this person is not a good goal scorer, they're going to show you their stats about how many goals they scored if they have stats to prove their point. You use empirical evidence to substantiate your position when you're having this kind of dialogue. And if you call me an idiot and a moron, and if you call me a fool from New York, and if you call me all these names, then I'm going to point to you to my resume to say, you know what? Does this suggest that is someone who doesn't have any level of intellect? And if you don't like that, I can't help you.
The man have no IQ levels. Here the man a come. Pelper.
Pelper.
A Pelper, my name Shanty. Pelper, my name not Pelper.
By the way, what about Kranky people? Apparently Kranky put out one.
Shanty man, what kind of Kranky brother?
He put out a video because me and
So you see what these people? These people can come at you hard as they want, but as soon as you respond, they get into their feelings. Huh? They can come hard as they want. They can call you a certain name. They can question your intelligence. But as soon as you come back at them, they can't deal with it. And frankly, when you come at me hard, as I said before, I'm going to come harder.
I get that motivation and say, if IQ drop, way past ground zero, way past Black River drop. So, him point him up their feelings. But me not watch some video there. Some of them know what I say.
Overall, the man bad mind now.
Kranky can't say nothing.
The man talk about your overall, the man talk about your platform and how much viewers you have.
Why that a madam?
I them think about mind them in a G.
That a madam.
Cause the man of the program I run to about 1 hour. And a 2 or 3 talent.
So people, I'm on YouTube, and it tells you how shallow people are. And Jamaicans like to use this term "bad mind," which means you're envious of the person and what they've achieved and attained. And by the way, I've said this, people, I am retired. You see retired people being envious of anyone about anything? If they have the ability to retire, why would they be envious? I started YouTube as a hobby, as fun. Yes, I've only have 5,000 subscribers. I've been doing it for about 16 months. Yeah, 16 months now I'm doing it. And I've thought about quitting YouTube because it does take a lot of time and a lot of research. It wouldn't for Maverick because he's very superficial. Taking no time. 2 minutes to do a video. Takes me time to go get evidence, double and triple check that evidence, because that's what I used to do in my previous life. I do a lot of due diligence, a lot of type of investigative type work. And I realized that, you know what? If you want to have credibility, if you want to make sure your work can stand up to what we call effective challenge or to scrutiny, then you have to put in the work. You can't just be superficial like Maverick does, where what he does can't stand up to scrutiny, but he'll defend it till he dies because he has a program. We can give you his nonsense meter and get rid of you. So this person come on and says, I am envious of Maverick because he has a lot of platform. My thing about his platform was this. When you have a platform that has a large audience and large reach, you have to be accountable and you have to be responsible, right? You hear him laughing about somebody calling me a very negative name and Shanty. That's being irresponsible as a host when you have such a huge following and such a platform. Now, most of his following is probably in Jamaica, and there are quite a few people in diaspora who probably listen to him also. But when you have, as he calls it, is Sports Explosion is a global show, you have to be a responsible person. You can no longer be a 5-year-old in the way you operate and be a kid and be irresponsible. So when you're supporting narratives such as this, that cannot be okay. I wasn't being envious of his platform, and I want his platform. I am pretty comfortable, right? I am retired. I am not stressed. He say he has an ambassadorial role. He has a radio program, TV program. I don't have to work that hard. In fact, I don't have to work at all. I choose to do this. I have 2 channels, Kranky Live and Balanced Views. Kranky Live is now going to be my sole sports channel where I talk about sports, maybe less about Jamaica football because it's a very divisive space. And Balanced View, which I'm trying to build out, which is now growing, where I talk about all of the matters. Politics, technology, criminal justice, investing, real estate, whatever the topic. And I also have a website, ssnnlive.com. You're going to look at it, where I write articles on various subjects. So this keeps me busy. You don't want to be sitting down, retired, getting a big belly. And I'm also going to starting to work out in the gym. So I have a pretty busy retirement life. But I can stop doing any one of these at any point in time. So to say a retired person who is comfortable, is envious, is very, very laughable to the people on his channel, both Craig from Houston and Pelper, who are saying I'm envious of his platform. Yes, would I like my channel to grow? Yeah, but it's a hobby. And if the hobby doesn't work, I go do another hobby. It's amazing how people are.
Me no
2 or 3 call at the most, brother. Come listen from start to finish.
Kranky feel he was making sense, but he was talking nonsense, my boss. I'm here to tell him that anytime I see him come across him and me feel he say it again, rubbish me that talk. But man,
General, me hear Shanti say, me take up him stats. One more half Shanti say, if at the club them hire him to go watch when the players them are play, and him put up them stats there. You see me, more half in fact, the man say him have been received and me go take up him stats and come with. You see, Shanti on IQ levels, brother. You know, see that?
Yeah, Kranky figure talk about some different stuff. Kranky, leave the football thing alone.
Shanti name, man. Don't call it no Kranky, brother. Yeah, one time I say, oh, him needs enough to call, enough about to talk about it. Your needs to the right. Your needs to the right, Shanti. Yo, big up yourself, my father. Can I speak to them? I'm going to
bless up yourself. Yeah, man, Kranky put out a video. Everything Mr. Terry called Kranky, he put out a video. Kranky, big up yourself.
So, yes, I do put out videos in response. And yes, my niece told me, and my nephew actually tell me, why are you in this space? Why are you in such a divisive space? Your breadth and your reach is much larger than this. Why don't you do other things? But I enjoy this space. I enjoy Jamaica. I grew up in Jamaica. Everything that my formative years were spent in Jamaica, I totally enjoyed my childhood. When I was in Jamaica, the environment I grew up in was safe. We were raised by a community. And I have an affinity for the island, and I support the island wholeheartedly. And I'm doing this right now in this very difficult time. And as part of this whole discussion, I should say, for the people on the island, I hope things recover quickly. I hope things work out well. And I hope that things improve drastically, because I know it's a difficult time for everyone. Difficult time. Now, I'll close off by saying this, and I hope this finishes this whole back and forth with Maverick and the people who support him and the people who are on his channel and the people who are anti-Kranky is this. When I joined this platform, part of the reason for joining is I was introduced to the platform by observing a number of channels, including Coach's Desk and some other channels. And I was on Coach's Desk for a while, thoroughly enjoy engaging with Minzy, him having as part of his community. And I said, you know what? When I retire, which was last March, I should do this. It's fun to do. I love the engagement. I think I have something to offer. And I think it could also be a continuous learning, because even though you retire, you want to continue to learn. I should be in this environment. And I've done this. I've enjoyed it. But things like these, which some people find interesting, some people find entertaining, I find it a little bit divisive, because I think as a people, we can have disagreement in terms of perspective, right? You can have disagreement in terms of debating and arguing, but we got to debate as professionals. Debating and calling people fool and idiot and fool from New York and all that, because it sounds good to your audience, because your audience operate a certain way, because it may seem to be more impactful. You can't be impactful without being rude, without being divisive, without being disrespectful. You can actually be. Try it. Maybe it will work. I know for some people it doesn't work, but you should try it. And for me, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm going to push back hard when you push back on me, because I don't think it's right. I think it's part of the culture which needs to change. I'm not accepting that as part of your culture. So when people are asking, where is he from, where he was born, and he must not be Jamaican. No, I am Jamaican. I can talk the language that you can talk. I eat the food that you eat. But I'm not going to take your nonsense. So if you come at me hard, I'm going to come back hard. But that's not the goal here. The goal is to say, look, Maverick has a platform. So do I. We'll disagree on a lot of different issues, including the players with the national team. And that's fine. But I won't accept false accusations about being anti-Jamaican or about being anti-local. So from this evening, I'm done with back and forth. We can debate ideas. We can respect people. My focus is on Jamaica and its maximized potential. And frankly, I'll say this. I hope Dixon and Cephas get game time in this window. I hope they score. I hope they assist. I hope we win. And I hope they go on to have successful careers. It is very unfortunate and unfair to these players that they're the subject of this discussion and this divisiveness. As they didn't create it, they're not part of it. We're doing it. So we have to take a step back, act like grown-ups, and stop berating the players. I wasn't berating the player. I was talking about meritocracy and who I think should be in the team and who may not be in the team. And it's been taken to a whole different level, which is unfortunate. And I'll say this again. I don't want to keep going with this back and forth. And even though I'm saying I'm done this evening, if this continues, then you know what? It continues. That's all I have to say. Peace out.